DCP Player free. Get it now from digital.net.au.
Hi, good morning everyone. Boy, I wish the lights were a little more up. There's so many faces here that I recognize, and certainly brings back memories over the last 13 years that we've been working on digital cinema. So basically, historically, business drove engineering. So you'd have a bunch of business guys that would get together in a room, that have a great idea, they'd call in a bunch of engineers and say, go build me this. And the engineers would go off in their sandbox, and they would come back and they would deliver the product. And business would continue. But today that's no longer the case. Today, engineering is driving business. And you can't look around and not see the very next thing that's happening in technology, the very next thing that's happening in engineering. And it's hard for business to keep up with all of that. It's hard to try to define how it is that you should be building your business when engineering is completely outpacing you. So one of the things that we try to do with digital cinema is create a playing field, if you will, that any new technology that came up could fit within the playing field. So we didn't do anything that specific that wouldn't allow additional technologies to come in and render everything essentially useless. We have some challenges that I'll talk about, toward the end of this, and I'm sure that David will also go through a lot of that. So when we originally started to think about digital cinema at a studio level, at a manufacturing level, at an exhibition level, we really had to identify sort of what the benefits of digital cinema would be. From a creative standpoint, we had filmmakers that were for and against the digital technology. In fact, still today, I think there are some filmmakers that are for and against digital technology. The fact is that they have to now work on a digital platform, even if they don't feel that digital is better than film. In fact, digital is better than film because it was measured and it is more consistent and provides a much better experience for consumers. For studios, obviously, moving to a digital platform, we're able to achieve tremendous economies of scale. And as deployment takes place around the world, there will be cost savings versus 35mm prints. There will be an infrastructure where things are delivered by digital and by satellite, which is far more efficient than 35mm film being put on trucks and taken to theaters. So big benefits there. From an exhibition standpoint, you only need to look at the possibility of 3D, 4D, laser projection that's coming down, centralizing playlists, and being able to customize what you want on every screen at any point in time. So film couldn't give you all of that. Digital is the platform that allows you to play 3D and to play 4D and to continue to grow the marketplace. And from a manufacturer's standpoint, one of the things that we try to do, obviously, is we try to design something where there was no proprietary technology. So that any manufacturer that wanted to build could build to a specification without having to be subject to the fees and the licensing that another company may impose on them. So what happened was, when all of this sort of started about, again, 12 or 13 years ago, there were a lot of questions because nothing at that point was deployed. There were one or two prototypes in the marketplace, but how was it going to happen in an organized way? I mean, was a large change like this even possible? Who would pay for it? How would the industry find agreement? Not only the studios, but the exhibitors and the manufacturers. All of these stars had to line up exactly in a row at the same time in order to achieve all of this. And then, of course, how would it be governed? You know, what were the rules of the game? So we had all of these questions that we tried to answer that really were not easy to do at all. One of the things that I think was a huge ignition point for starting to organize digital cinema was the formation of DCI. Digital Cinema Initiatives was formed by the studios and co-funded by all of the studios. And its mission was, from an engineering standpoint, to ensure that the digital technology that was being recommended not only exceeded film, but would create the sort of environment that manufacturers could be involved in and that exhibitors could be involved in, and that could have an organized deployment around the world. So the Digital Cinema Initiatives, which was an organization that lasted probably 5 or 6 years, I would think, in terms of having a staff, really developed the specification. And then the staff, obviously, once the specification was done and manufacturers were beginning to manufacture the equipment, Digital Cinema Initiatives essentially lost the staff, but the studios kept the organization together because it has earned a tremendous amount of credibility, and it is still involved in identifying the things that the industry needs to focus on. So obviously, standards was a huge thing. So if we ignored the standards and we let the industry run amok, the kind of thing that would happen is that you'd have a total mess on your hands, you'd have proprietary technology, there would be no controls that would be able to lead this in an organized fashion, the security would be substandard, there would be erratic deployment of different kinds of systems all over the world, and you would have multiple incompatible formats, which I think nobody wants. Whereas if we organized it in a way which we did, and the whole industry did that, and it was distributors, it was manufacturers, it was exhibitors, it was basically everyone in the room who really worked together to make this all happen, because without all of you, none of this would have actually happened. But we wanted to create open standards that were non-proprietary. We wanted to assure that there were a good amount of controls with a high level of security, ensure that it was better than 35mm film, and that the industry had to embrace and adopt digital cinema. And we had to do all of this while controlling the cost so that it would become affordable for exhibitors to not only acquire the product, but to find a way to finance it. So once the specification was done, the question became, well, who's going to pay for it? So there were all kinds of charts, and you don't have to look at this, but I mean, there was a plan that's called the virtual print fee plan, where you had a financial entity or a deployment entity that would have to engage in deals with the studios, with exhibitors, with manufacturers, and organize a deployment that made sense to the exhibitors that they were working with. And you can see from this chart that it really wasn't an easy thing to do. There were lots of things that had to sort of fall together at the same time, including structured financing. And this all took place at a time where the economy was in terrible shape. And banks really weren't lending a tremendous amount of money. So we had to sort of wade through all of that in order to eventually get all of these things funded and move it to reality. So the virtual print fee basically involved a distributor who would pay what was the equivalent of a 35mm print cost to a financial entity. An exhibitor would pay some, and the contracted third party would deploy the equipment and the services, and the exhibitors would pay a small fee for acquiring the digital system. So then Avatar came along, and obviously Avatar, which is the most successful picture in history, was digital, it was 3D, and I think this was a huge ignition point. I think James Cameron, who really got behind the whole digital movement when Avatar came out, was also a huge ignition point for a lot of exhibitors to want to get digital projectors in order to play Avatar. So the implementation of the digital standard took place, and it was then up to studios and up to exhibitors and up to third parties to deliver digital content to theaters as efficiently as possible. So obviously there are three essential ways to deliver content. One is to ship hard drives to theaters. Another one is through broadband connection or fiber optics. And the third one is satellite. And obviously satellite has begun to be deployed here in the United States. There's satellite equipment in Europe. There's a lot of discussion going on in Latin America. So that seems to be an infrastructure that's moving ahead very quickly. And so for satellite, basically, you uplink to the satellite your content, which is then, transmitted down to a particular footprint. So there are satellites in the United States that cover the entire United States in terms of its footprint. So you only really need one transmission to reach almost every single theater. Digital conversion. Where are we today? Well, there are about 115,000 digital screens deployed, which is very close to the number of first-run theaters there are around the world. There are about 75,000 deployed internationally and about 40,000 deployed in the United States. When you look at it by country, and I know you probably can't read this, but the green bars represent full deployment, 100% deployment. And the red bars going down from Japan, United Kingdom, Russia, Mexico, Germany, Sweden, Poland, Italy, Spain, India, Turkey, and Brazil, you can see that they are substantially deployed. And I think it's safe to say that within the next year or two, they will also tend toward 100%. So you can also look at the same information by region. And you can also look at what digital makes possible in terms of the emerging technologies in 3D and laser and live feeds like for the World Cup, in addition to a number of other kinds of programming that theaters are now capable of playing. Going forward, obviously there's work to be done, and I'm sure David will talk a little bit more about this, but it involves education at the production level, the post-production level, maintaining interoperability, which is key and critical. Standards still need to be set for 3D subtitling. Interoperable packages for audio formats is still an issue. Standards for laser projection, realizing a fully digital global pipeline, maintaining the standards amongst constant change, and navigating governments and regulations, particularly as things like satellite come in. So that's sort of a snapshot of where we were, why we went digital, and sort of where we are today. Again, it's taken about 13 years. It's been a monumental effort, and we can't look back. We won't look back. So with that, I'll bring David back up, and I'm sure he'll take you through to the next issues. Thank you.